They say the woods behind Stillwater were cursed long before the town even existed. The trees there don't grow right. Twisted trunks and crooked branches claw at the sky as if trying to escape. The air is heavy damp with a smell of rot and iron that clings to your clothes. And if you're unlucky enough to wander too deep, you might hear them, the whispers. I never believed the stories, of course. Everyone in Stillwater grows up hearing the same warnings. Don't go into the woods after dark. Don't follow the voices. But as a teenager with an inflated sense of bravery and a love for urban legends, I saw the woods as a challenge rather than a threat. It started as a dare, like all bad ideas do. My friends James, Rebecca, and I had been sitting around a campfire one crisp autumn night, swapping ghost stories. Rebecca, with her usual smirk, leaned forward and said, "If you're so fearless, why don't you prove it? Spend one night in the Whispering Woods." "Easy," I said without hesitation. "Not alone," James added quickly. "That's just dumb. We'll all go." The plan was simple. Enter the woods just before midnight, stay until dawn, and prove once and for all there was nothing to be afraid of. We packed the essentials, flashlight, snacks, and a couple of sleeping bags and headed out. The first thing I noticed as we entered the woods was how quiet it was. Too quiet. The usual chorus of nighttime insects and rustling leaves was absent, replaced by an unnatural stillness. No breeze stirred the air, which felt thick and stagnant, almost like stepping into a sealed room. The moon barely pierced the canopy above, leaving us reliant on the weak beams of our flashlights. Rebecca led the way, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. "Maybe the whispers are just some old guy with a bad cough," she said, laughing. James chuckled nervously, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. The shadows between the trees seemed to stretch and shift when I looked away, forming shapes that dissolved the moment I tried to focus on them. "Anyone else feel like the trees are closer than they should be?" James asked, his voice low. "Stop psyching yourself out," Rebecca replied. But even she was gripping her flashlight tighter than usual. We reached a small clearing and decided to set up camp. The clearing didn't feel right, though it was almost too perfect, as if the forest had deliberately made space for us. The ground was bare dirt, unnaturally smooth, with no grass or leaves to soften it. Rebecca tried to laugh it off, claiming it was convenient, but I could see the unease in her eyes. Hours passed uneventfully. We shared snacks and told a few more stories, but none of us could truly relax. James kept glancing over his shoulder, and Rebecca's usual bravado was fading. I tried to ignore the gnawing sensation in my gut that we weren't alone. When James dozed off first, Rebecca followed shortly after, leaving me alone with the oppressive quiet. I was just starting to drift off when I heard it, a faint melodic whisper, just on the edge of hearing. I froze, holding my breath to listen. The sound was impossible to pinpoint, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the pattern was too deliberate, too human. I nudged Rebecca awake, whispering, "Do you hear that?" She sat up, groggy and annoyed. "Hear what?" The whispering had stopped. The silence pressed down on me, so complete it felt alive, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. James stirred suddenly, sitting upright with wide eyes. "Who's out there?" he mumbled, pointing into the darkness. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I saw someone," he said, his hand shaking as he pointed again. "Right there, standing between those trees." Rebecca swept her flashlight beam in the direction he pointed, but there was nothing but gnarled trees and shadows. "You're dreaming," she muttered, lying back down. But James wasn't convinced. Neither was I. Then the whispering returned, louder this time, unmistakable. It wasn't a single voice, but many, layered on top of each other in a language I couldn't understand. The sound seemed to ripple through the air, brushing against my skin like icy fingers. Rebecca bolted upright, her face pale. "Okay, I hear it now." The whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving a melody that was both beautiful and horrifying. They weren't just random noises, they were speaking to us. Pleading, warning, taunting. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt them deep in my bones. "Leave." James panicked. "We need to go," he shouted, scrambling to his feet. "No," Rebecca snapped. "If we run now, we'll get lost. We stick together." But James didn't listen. He bolted into the trees, his flashlight beam bobbing wildly before vanishing entirely. "James," I shouted, my voice echoing uselessly. The whispers swelled, mocking me. Rebecca grabbed my arm. "We have to find him now." We stumbled through the trees, the forest seeming to shift around us. The path we'd followed earlier was gone, replaced by an endless maze of gnarled roots and clawing branches. My flashlight flickered, the beams sputtering out at the worst moments. Every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of movement just beyond the light, too fast, too fluid to be human. "James," Rebecca called, her voice breaking. We found his flashlight first, lying in the dirt with the bulb shattered. There was no sign of him. And then the whispers stopped. The silence was worse. It pressed down on us, thick and suffocating. A chill ran down my spine, and I felt a presence behind me, cold and oppressive. Slowly I turned. A figure stood there, just at the edge of the light. It was tall and impossibly thin, its skin pale as bone and stretched too tightly over its frame. Empty sockets stared out from where its eyes should have been, yet I felt its gaze pierce straight through me. When it opened its mouth, the whispers poured out, surrounding us in a suffocating tide. Rebecca screamed, grabbing my arm and pulling me away. We ran blindly, the creature's whispers chasing us through the woods. Branches clawed at our faces and clothes, but we didn't stop until we burst out onto the main road, gasping for air. James was never found. The police searched the woods for weeks, but came up empty-handed. Rebecca moved away not long after, and I don't blame her. I tried to put it behind me, but the whispers, they followed me. Sometimes, late at night, I hear them again, faint and distant, like an old memory trying to resurface. And every time, I think about James and wonder if he's still out there, wandering the whispering woods, listening to the voices forever. The curse of the whispering woods. The whispering woods have always been shrouded in mystery and fear. Long before Stillwater was settled, the land was sacred to a small indigenous tribe that lived along the riverbanks. They believed the forest was a gateway to the spirit world, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin. According to legend, the tribe's shaman would enter the woods to commune with spirits, seeking guidance and wisdom. But the balance was delicate. The shaman warned that the spirits of the forest demanded respect, and any act of greed or violence within its bounds would awaken something ancient and terrible. They called it the Hunger, a nameless force that dwelled deep within the heart of the forest, neither alive nor dead. It was said to feed on fear, drawing strength from those who dared to enter its domain. The tribe's warnings went unheeded when settlers arrived. The new inhabitants of the area saw the woods as a resource to be exploited. Trees were felled, and the earth was dug up for farming and construction. The whispers began soon after, faint at first but growing louder with each passing year. Livestock disappeared. Families spoke of waking in the middle of the night to find their children standing at the edge of the woods, staring blankly into the darkness. The settlers tried to fight back. They burned sections of the forest, hoping to drive out whatever malevolence lingered there. But the fires only seemed to make it angrier. The flames died inexplicably, leaving behind untouched trees and charred bodies of those who started them. The town's priest organized an exorcism, leading a group of men into the woods with crosses and holy water. None of them returned. Over time, the people of Stillwater learned to live with the woods. They avoided it, passed down the warnings, and prayed the whispers would never come for them. But every few years, someone would disappear, a hunter, a curious teenager, a lost hiker, and the whispers would grow louder, as if the forest were reminding them of its presence.